Hello, friends. Ken Graves here with God's Sword. Tuesday, April 22nd. Our text, the second half of Matthew chapter 2. So the Magi arrived in Jerusalem. They disturb everyone with their question. They seem to expect everyone in Jerusalem to be aware of what they're talking about, that Israel has had its promised king, Messiah, be born. But they discover, these Gentile Magi discover that they're the only ones who seem to be in on it. But no one else knows what they're talking about. And their arrival gets the attention of Herod the Great. Herod meets with them, and he determines to pretend to be mutually interested in this king. He's interested for his own selfish reason. He intends to murder this rival to his, throne. So first he gets together with the scribes to find out what the prophecies say, which is interesting to me, that he has a concept that, God speaks prophetically and yet thinks he can stop God, that he could stop God's chosen Messiah. He finds out Bethlehem is the place. He meets again secretly with the Magi. And he inquires very carefully of them when this star appeared. So he has a place. He's putting crosshairs together. He has a place. He has an approximate age of this threat to him. And so he takes action later. Now the Magi, they leave Herod, who is so evil smooth and evil cool that he doesn't act mad with paranoia, but instead encourages them to continue their search. And when they have actually found this child, to let him know so that he could also come and worship him also. They leave Herod. The star which they had seen in the east, they see it again, only now it goes before them. And it leads them to Bethlehem. And they observe the star as it stood over one particular place, most likely, as I mentioned yesterday, a comet, with its tail, like the cursor on your computer screen, or like an arrow on a picture. It stands like a scepter, the tail of the comet, standing on the horizon, on the Bethlehem skyline, over one house. They go to that house, they find the young child and his mother. They find on earth what they saw depicted in the stars in the heavens. But then, verse 13 says, now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, get up, and that's an exclamation point, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him. Now, that's a frightening message to, I'm sure, Joseph. Joseph has been thrust by God into this adventure. And it is an adventure. It starts out that way. I don't know how it ends for Joseph. So little is written about him after what we are reading here. The Magi are previously warned by an angel in a dream to not return, but to go back to their own country another way. But the urgency of this get up exclamation point. Take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt. Remain there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him. So Joseph got up and took the child and his mother while it was still night and departed for Egypt. While it was still night. No streetlights, no headlights. Travel in the ancient world just did not happen at night, unless you're fleeing. It is written here in verse 15, and he remained there until the death of Herod, in order that what had been spoken by the Lord to the prophet would be fulfilled, saying, out of Egypt I called my son. So God prophesied that his son would be called out of Egypt. That prophecy from the Old Testament, both in Exodus, Hosea, and in Numbers. It's sort of a composite prophecy. Interesting thing, but that God would see to it that the prophecy was fulfilled by his son being carried. Again, I marvel that God, in his genius, would send his son to put on flesh. The wonder of the incarnation, but not only that, but to put on flesh and become a little human baby, to be helpless enough that he, God, the Son, should allow a mortal man and a mortal woman to carry his son to safety and out of the range of Herod, that he would trust himself, that he would trust his son to be obedient, and indeed they were. Verse 16 says, then when Herod saw that he'd been tricked by the Magi, he became very enraged and sent and slew all the male children who were in Bethlehem and all its vicinity, from 2 years old and under according to the time, which he had carefully determined from the Magi. Then what had been spoken to Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. Jeremiah prophesied these words, a voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and she was refusing to be comforted because they were no more. Broken-hearted, beautiful, suffering Rachel, associated with Bethlehem. She and her sister, both married to the same man, Jacob. Every time the Bible deals with the reality of the polygamy of the ancient world, it is always to include the suffering that that arrangement caused, and everyone suffered, but especially the women. Rachel had been the beautiful wife. Her dirty-dealing father arranged it so that Jacob would be deceived in the dark, and he would both marry, enter vows, and consummate with her sister, her rather plain sister. Then work another 7 years to earn the wife that he longed for. And the rivalry between the two sisters, this is to me, the absurdity of the concept of sister wives. They were rivals, they were enemies, and every single thing that followed was a constant struggle for the affection of one man. Leah was not beautiful, but she was fruitful. She bore children. She made babies. She was fruitful. Beautiful Rachel was barren. Ultimately, the Lord would open her womb and she would bear a son, that son, Joseph. And then later, in Bethlehem, she would conceive and give birth to Benjamin and die in the process of bringing him to the world. She, on her way out of the world, dying, named him son of my sorrows. Such was her great pain. Rachel weeping, it's a prophetic statement. Can I point out to you just how in tune God is with the weeping of Rachel? That this prophetic statement, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing comfort because they were not, was fulfilled in that awful event of Herod's mass murder of the baby boys in the whole precinct of Bethlehem. Verse 19 says, "But when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Get up, take the child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel. For those who sought the child's life are dead." So Joseph got up and took the child and his mother and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Then after being warned by God in a dream, he departed for the district of Galilee, and came and lived in a city called Nazareth, or Nazareth, as the Jews say, as the Hebrews, the Israelites, Nazareth. So he came and lived in a city called Nazareth, so that what was spoken through the prophets would be fulfilled. He shall be called a Nazarene. That he shall be called a Nazarene is a difficult prophecy to find specifically. That he is ultimately a Nazarite. The best way to understand the fulfillment of those prophecies would be those prophecies from Isaiah that refer to him as the branch. Out of the tree, what is essentially the root of David. It would seem that the tree had been cut, and at its stump something sprouts, a branch. And that branch, with a capital B, are the references to Messiah. Well, Nazareth, it sort of means branch, right? Branch town. So it would seem that those are those are the prophecies which are fulfilled in him being called a Nazarene. Well, so many prophecies fulfilled. Bethlehem, the city that God, speaking through the prophets, said would be the city where Messiah would be born. The prophecy that God would call his son out of Egypt. Now, certainly you know that neither Herod or Joseph or anybody else was even aware of these prophecies like that when they weren't trying to make prophecy happen. But God used them. God used a wicked king like Caesar to cause Joseph and Mary to leave Nazareth, the city that he was from, for the baby to be born in the place where the prophet said that the baby would be born. And then God used Herod to drive from Bethlehem Joseph and Mary carrying the baby into Egypt so that the prophecy would be fulfilled. I've called my son out of Egypt. And then returning, used Archelaus and the danger posed by him in and around Judah, in and around Jerusalem, to cause Joseph and Mary to return to Nazareth, settled there, so that ultimately the other prophecies would be fulfilled, that Messiah would be called in Nazareth. Nazareth, a branch. So, the genius of God and foreknowing and foretelling and even orchestrating, as much that I cannot pretend to understand, I do know that God foreknows. And he knows what's going to happen long before it happens. And he foretells. And his son was born when he was supposed to be born, where he was supposed to be born, carried to where he was supposed to be carried, brought out of there when he was supposed to be, and brought to Nazareth where he would live and grow up and be known as Jesus of Nazareth. So all set up. Well, there's your study for today. We'll continue with this day after tomorrow with chapter 3. Grace and peace to you all.